name is Robyn, and she would never let me do anything naughty. As bad as I want to do it.
For over 10 years, we were all fed a story, a carefully packaged tale of faith, family, and love that was supposed to multiply instead of divide. Week after week, viewers tuned in, believing they were witnessing something extraordinary. They family building homes together, raising nearly 20 children, and navigating a life that felt almost unimaginable to the average person. We were told their greatest treasure wasn't money, property, or even fame.
Healing with Mary, I would love healing with Janelle, I would love healing with Christine.
Their greatest asset, we were assured, was their unity, the unbreakable bond of family. But looking back now, that was never the truth. The real asset, the thing that held the most power, wasn't love or even land. It was their story itself, the rights to their lives, their heartbreaks, their sacrifices, and their triumphs, sold to the highest bidder and broadcast to millions. And in the shadows of that deal, he stole it. Tonight, we're pulling back. The curtain on a story that's been whispered about for years, hidden beneath the tall pines of Flagstaff.
Coyote Pass soon.
This is bull. I'm not selling this land until everything is perfectly fair and we do this the right way. Sorry.
It's a standoff at the Coyote Pass.
Buried under carefully constructed narratives. This is a story stitched together from insider leaks, legal filings, and deep dive analysis. A story so dark, so manipulative, that once you hear it, you will never look at this family the same way again. Because this isn't just about squabbles, over property lines, or fights for attention, or even the endless tug of war for Kody's affection. No, this cuts straight to the heart of their empire. This is the story of what we can only call the great TLC contract fraud. But before we unravel this alleged multi-million-dollar scheme, I need your help. If you believe these women deserve justice, if you are as exhausted as I am by the years of secrets and lies, then right now, hit that like button. It's a small act that tells YouTube this story matters. And if you're new here, if you're not yet part of this crew, subscribe and ring the notification bell, because I promise you, what's coming next will shock you. And trust me, you don't want to miss a single update as this story unfolds. Your support is what fuels these investigations. Now, let's get into it. From the very beginning, the entire foundation of Sister Wives was built on an illusion. More of a corporate mirage than a true partnership. The pitch was simple. 1 man, 4 wives, and their combined 18 children, living as one cohesive, plural family unit. They marketed themselves as equals, united in faith, in parenting, and even in finances. So when the deal with TLC was struck back in 2010, the public was led to believe, and the show promoted, that this was a family contract, a single life-changing opportunity that would lift everyone out of years of financial struggle and allow them to flourish together. That's what we were supposed to think. That the network's money flowed directly into the Brown family household, shared for the good of all. But sources close to the show's early days tell a very different story. Not one of shared partnership, but of a single man locking down power through corporate law. According to insiders who have followed the Brown family's filings for years, just before cameras ever started rolling, a new company was quietly formed. Let's call it what it truly was: Patriarch Productions, LLC. The legal name may have been something like Kody Brown Family Entertainment or Brown Media, but make no mistake, the name didn't matter. The structure did. And the structure was damning. Industry expert Eliza Vance has pointed out that in reality, television, this setup isn't unusual. Networks don't want to juggle contracts with 5 different adults. It's messy, complicated, and a headache for business, affairs departments. Instead, they encourage, sometimes even demand, that a family form what's called a loan-out corporation. This entity acts as the middleman, loaning the talent, in this case, the entire Brown family, to the production company. On paper, it looks neat and simple. The problem, however, lies in who controls that corporation, and this is where the alleged betrayal cuts deepest. Because according to those familiar with the deal, Kody Brown wasn't just the head of the household. Spiritually, he was the sole member, sole manager, and sole owner of this corporation. That's right. The women who had stood by him for decades, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, weren't partners. They weren't co-owners. They were legally reduced to little more than employees, contractors, paid workers in a show that was about their own lives. Think about the implications for a second. If you're a partner in a company, you're entitled to everything, to profits, to transparency, to the right to see the books and know how much money is really flowing in. But if you're just an employee, you get a paycheck. That's it. No insight, no control, no access to the millions pouring in. You're an actor on your own stage, while someone else keeps the keys to the theater. And suddenly all of Kody's grand on-screen declarations about being the head of the household don't sound so symbolic anymore. They take on a chilling new edge. It wasn't just about faith. It wasn't just about patriarchal tradition. It was, we allege, a legally binding corporate arrangement that he engineered from the very beginning. Kody wasn't just their husband, he was their boss. He wasn't just the family leader, he was their CEO. And the wives, the heart and soul of the show, were reclassified as the workforce. So how did this play out financially? The scam, if you want to call it that, was deceptively simple. Let's talk numbers. Based on industry standards for a hit show of Sister Wives' scale and longevity, the Browns could have been earning anywhere between $2 to $4 million per season in later years. To keep it conservative, let's say $2.5 million. Now here's the kicker. The $2.5 million check from TLC didn't get deposited into a shared Brown family bank account. No, it was wired directly to Patriarch Productions, Kody's company. From there, Kody, as CEO, had full authority over what happened to every single dollar. According to insiders, the wives were given stipends or salaries, amounts that at first glance sounded impressive, especially to a family that had faced financial disaster before the cameras arrived. But when you compare those stipends to the bigger picture, they were crumbs. For example, if each wife received $150,000 for a season, that's a total of $600,000. On its own, that feels like a lot. But stacked against the $2.5 million haul, it means $1.9 million was left untouched, sitting in Kody's corporate account. Money he alone controlled. Money the women had no legal right to even ask about. Think about the absurdity. These women were the stars, the storyline, the emotional anchors of the show. But Kody owned the factory. They provided the product. He owned the profit. And then came Las Vegas. We were told the move was about escaping religious persecution, about a family fleeing to protect themselves. It was dramatic, emotional, the perfect hook for season 2. But what if that wasn't the full truth? What if the real purpose behind the Vegas move was financial? Financial experts like Franklin Adler point out that a chaotic move is often the perfect smokescreen for restructuring finances. Think about it. Uprooting 18 children, selling homes, resettling in a brand new state. In all that confusion, it's easy to close old accounts, open new ones, and quietly shift assets around without anyone asking too many questions. In other words, the chaos wasn't a side effect, it was a strategy. And look at how it played out. 4 brand new homes, all sitting together in a Las Vegas cul-de-sac, presented to viewers as the wives' long-awaited independence. Finally, their own space. But the truth, according to records and insider accounts, may be far darker. Those homes weren't secured through a family trust or shared accounts. They were financed through Kody's central corporation, which means one thing: control. If a wife ever decided to leave, her claim to equity in that home would be tangled, messy, nearly impossible to argue. Was it really her asset, or was it the company's? If her salary was being funneled directly through Patriarch, productions to cover the mortgage, could she even claim she'd paid for it? In essence, the corporation owned the homes, and that turned what looked like freedom into something far more sinister: a golden cage. And just as this golden cage was being polished, someone else was stepping into the spotlight. By the time the family settled in Las Vegas, a new player had emerged. She wasn't just the 4th wife anymore. She was quickly becoming something far more influential. Insiders suggest that Robyn Brown, with her background in credit, contracts, and life outside the plural marriage bubble, was stepping into the role of the de facto CFO of the Brown Empire. A former crew member who worked closely with the Yori Browns but spoke only under the protection of anonymity painted a striking picture of what was really happening behind the scenes. They described it like this: Kody may have held the patriarchal authority, the loud voice, the visible dominance, but Robyn had the playbook. In production meetings, the original wives would talk about emotions, family concerns, and the struggles of raising such a massive household. They came to the table as wives, as mothers, as women trying to make sense of their shared life. But Robyn would sit quietly. She would bide her time. And then, in a whisper, she'd lean toward Kody. Suddenly, as if a switch had been flipped, Kody's tone would change. He'd stop talking about feelings and start throwing around words like branding, strategy, corporate growth. Where had those ideas come from? According to this insider, the spark was almost always Robyn. And here's the chilling allegation: Robyn wasn't just a quiet participant in the family. She was allegedly the one reinforcing the very corporate system that had left the other wives powerless. She understood something the others didn't. Being classified as an employee was a dead end. There was no ownership, no leverage, no power in that role. Robyn saw that the true seat of power was being an owner. And since Kody had already claimed sole ownership of the main LLC, the next best move was to create a parallel corporate structure. When she could co-own with him, enter my sister wife's closet. On television, it was pitched as a feel-good family business, a chance for the wives to come together to create something uniquely their own outside of Kody's shadow. Jewelry, unity, empowerment, that was the sales pitch. But when you dig deeper, when you examine business filings and replay the drama we saw on screen, another picture emerges. This wasn't just a jewelry business. This was, according to our theory, a Trojan horse. A way for Kody and Robyn to quietly funnel profits from the main television corporation into a second company that they, and only they, ultimately controlled. Financial. Expert Franklin Adler broke it down bluntly. It's a way to legitimize expenditures. Think about it. If Kody's main production company suddenly has $1 million in profit, he can't just start buying mansions, cars, or luxury vacations with it without raising alarms and massive tax liabilities. But if he moves that money into a startup, suddenly it's all business. $500,000 can be invested into my sister wife's closet. Now that money is in a new company, a company that can spend on design trips, inventory that may or may not even sell, office furniture, marketing, leased vehicles, all neatly written off as business expenses. The paper trail gets muddy. Tiabdawa, money moves one step further away from its original source, the TLC contract that all 5 adults were working to earn. And here's the kicker, who was grinding the hardest on this so-called family business? It wasn't Mary, Janelle, or Christine. They treated it more like a side project, something to dabble in. But Robyn treated it like her full-time job. And our theory is clear, she knew it was much more than a jewelry business. This was her escape hatch, the legal, justifiable way she and Kody could spend vast amounts of money outside the watchful eyes of her sister wives. While the others lived on modest stipends, believing the family pot was being shared equally, the truth may have been that this pot was slowly draining. Straight into a business controlled by Kody and Robyn, and the signs were right there on our screens. Remember Robyn's endless insistence on bigger rental homes with more space, more features? Remember the lavish parties, the extravagant gifts for her children, the lifestyle upgrades? Meanwhile, Christine and Janelle were counting pennies, drawing up spreadsheets just to make ends meet, and even rationing resources to support their kids. The contrast was glaring. While the OG wives were stuck budgeting like single-income households, Kody and Robyn appeared to be living under an entirely different budget. One we theorize was a secret corporate budget. If Las Vegas was the stage, where Kody consolidated his financial dominance, then Flagstaff was his attempt to cement it permanently. And at the center of that attempt was Coyote Pass, the so-called Dreamland. But let's be honest, what viewers were sold as a family utopia was, according to our sources, nothing more than a carefully disguised trap. The land at Coyote Pass cost $820,000. To make that purchase happen, everyone had to chip in. Janelle poured in equity from selling her Vegas home. Christine did the same. Even Mary contributed from hers. These women sacrificed the security of their tangible personal assets, their homes, their independence, to invest in what was supposed to be the family's future. But the key question no one could ever answer clearly was this: who actually owned the land? The ownership was a tangled mess, deliberately confusing. Different parcels, different names, a jigsaw puzzle that almost seemed designed to blur accountability. But according to our forensic accountant, the real funding power always traced back to one place: Patriarch Productions, LLC, Kody's company, and here's where the brilliance of the scheme becomes apparent, at least from a financial control perspective. Kody convinced the wives to sell their homes, liquidate their wealth, and sink it into raw land. Land that generated no income, that couldn't easily be sold, that kept their money tied up and inaccessible. Then to actually develop that land, to build the dream homes they were promised, they would need one thing: more funding. Funding that only Kody could release through his LLC. It was the ultimate power play. He stripped them of financial independence and replaced it with dependence. If they ever wanted their dream homes to exist, they'd have to go, hat in hand, to Kody, not just their husband, but their CEO, and beg for funds. Funds that, ironically, they had already helped earn by sacrificing their lives to reality. TV. It was a golden cage, dressed up as a family vision. And what happened once they arrived in Flagstaff? Did the dream materialize? No. The land sat barren. The homes were never built. The vision of unity was nothing more than smoke. Instead, something very different happened. While Janelle struggled in temporary rentals and even lived in an RV, at one point, and Christine scrambled to keep her household afloat, Kody and Robyn purchased a sprawling mansion. On the show, Kody threw out a dozen excuses. The kids needed more space. It was the only thing available. It was an investment. But when you peel back the layers, our theory suggests something much simpler. That mansion wasn't just a family home. It was, very likely, another corporate asset, either directly purchased by Patriarch Productions or at the very least heavily subsidized by it. Once again, Kody and Robyn secured stability and comfort, while the other wives languished in uncertainty. And this is where, according to entertainment lawyer Eliza Vance, the alleged fraud crosses into truly insidious territory. Because the show's narrative was one thing, a family struggling to build their dream homes on Coyote Pass, but the reality off-screen may have been something entirely different. A corporate entity using its profits to acquire luxury assets for its owner while stringing along its so-called employees with empty promises. The wives were essentially funding their own disenfranchisement. Every fight, every tear, every emotional breakdown filmed for the show made the ratings climb. Higher ratings meant bigger paychecks from TLC. And every one of those paychecks flowed back into Kody's black box of a corporation, strengthening his hold. It was a cycle, a feedback loop of emotional turmoil on screen and financial exploitation off screen. And for years, the wives didn't fully see it. They were operating on trust, on shared history, on the belief that this was still about faith and family. They couldn't wrap their minds around the possibility that Kody, the man they had built their lives around, had allegedly built a corporate wall to separate himself from them. A wall not made of stone, but of paperwork, contracts, and bank transfers. A wall invisible to the eye, but harder than steel. But no wall lasts forever. And the first cracks came from the most unlikely place. One wife, after years of swallowing her pain in silence, finally reached her breaking point. She wasn't just leaving a marriage, she was, in her own way, taking a sledgehammer to the foundation of Kody's entire empire. Christine looked him in the eye and said the words that would change everything. "I'm leaving you. We are divorced." That moment wasn't just a breakup. It was the beginning of Kody Brown's great financial reckoning. Because in walking away, Christine did more than reclaim her personal freedom. She opened the door to exposing the alleged fraud that had been buried under this family for over a decade. And whether Kody realized it in that moment or not, her fight for independence would spark the unraveling of the empire he thought he had locked down forever. We've already explored how Kody's financial structure may have allowed him to control the flow of millions from TLC, distributing modest salaries to the wives while he and Robyn funneled the majority of profits for their own use. This scheme eventually culminated in the infamous Coyote Pass financial trap. But as with any house of cards, even the most carefully constructed system can collapse with the smallest disruption. And in this story, that disruption came in the form of a warrior queen who finally chose herself. Christine Brown's decision to leave Kody was not simply the end of a spiritual marriage. It was, in essence, a corporate extraction. She wasn't just detangling herself from a man. She was attempting to free herself from a financial web deliberately designed to keep her bound. And in doing so, she became the first person to truly audit what we call Patriarch Productions. The first real battleground was her Flagstaff home, the property she had been living in for years. On television, the argument was framed as an emotional dilemma. Would Kody support her, and would the family stand behind her decision? But off camera, the real war was about ownership, legality, and control of corporate assets. Entertainment lawyer Eliza Vance called this the very first true test of the Brown family's alleged corporate structure. If our theory holds, the down payment for Christine's house likely came from the LLC, and the mortgage payments were made through that same entity. Now Christine wanted to sell the house and use the equity to begin her new life in Utah. But Kody, acting as CEO of the LLC, could have easily made a cold, calculated, though morally bankrupt argument that equity wasn't Christine's at all. It was the corporation's. She'd been living in a corporate-owned property, her housing covered as part of her compensation package, and therefore, any profit from the sale should legally revert back to the company. This, we believe, was the true source of the long and heated battle over Christine's home. It was never simply about Kody losing a wife. It was about a CEO refusing to lose an asset. Even more crucially, it was about preventing a dangerous precedent. If Christine walked away with her equity intact, then what would stop the other wives from demanding the same? According to a source with indirect knowledge of the negotiations, the situation unfolded like a financial hostage standoff. Christine had to fight tooth and nail for every single dollar. To make her case, Christine and her legal team had to demand the one thing Kody never wanted to hand over: the books. Forensic accountant Franklin Adler explained that to prove her rightful share, Christine's side would have needed to trace the money flow. Where did the funds from her house sale actually go? Straight into Coyote Pass. Where did the money for her down payment originate? Christine would argue it was her portion of the family pot. Kody would counter that it was simply a corporate allocation. This back and forth would inevitably lead into discovery. Her lawyers subpoenaing bank statements from the LLC, digging into original TLC contracts, and demanding access to the corporate operating agreement. For a man who had thrived in the shadows, this was his worst nightmare. Sunlight was finally breaking in. Eventually, the sale of Christine's home went through, and she walked away with roughly $700,000. So why, after fighting so hard, did Kody suddenly relent? Our source suggests two powerful reasons. First, the threat of discovery loomed far too large. A drawn-out legal battle risked exposing the entire structure, not just to Christine, but also to Janelle, Mary, and eventually the public. The fallout would have been catastrophic compared to the value of Christine's equity. Second, and perhaps most importantly, Christine held a trump card the others did not yet have: a brand new contract. By leaving Kody, Christine became more valuable to TLC than ever before. The drama of her departure was ratings gold, and the network, seeing her star power, moved quickly to secure her in a separate solo deal. Eliza Vance explained that this changed everything. A solo contract meant Christine now had her own direct line to the network. She had her own agent, her own lawyer, and her own corporation, her own brand. No longer just talent funneled through Kody's company, she now had leverage, and with that leverage came power. Christine could essentially say, "Give me my equity, or I'll use my new contract to expose everything in a tell-all." At that moment, the balance of power shifted entirely. Christine had cornered Kody into checkmate, but Christine didn't just walk away with her money, she walked away with a roadmap. She had proven escape was possible, that the corporate prison could be broken. And back in Flagstaff, another prisoner was quietly taking notes. Janelle Brown. Janelle had always been the pragmatic one. The wife who worked outside the home, the one who understood finances, the one Kody often referred to as his buddy or business partner. The irony, based on our investigation, is that this financially savvy wife may have been the victim of the family's biggest financial con. For years, Janelle believed she and Kody were united in their financial vision. She poured her savings into Coyote Pass, convinced she was building her retirement and a legacy home for her children. The RV she bought wasn't just a temporary inconvenience, it was a sacrifice for a long-term dream. But after watching Christine fight and win her freedom, Janelle's perspective shifted dramatically. Their arguments on screen began to take on a different meaning. When Kody said, "You and I can have a headbutting contest, but I'm not going to do it in front of the children." And when Janelle countered, "It seems like I have to do everything by myself." These weren't merely marital spats. Look closer, and you'll see the outlines of a financial standoff. Janelle was demanding accountability for her investment, demanding progress on land she had poured her savings into. Kody, rather than acting like a business partner, dismissed her concerns like an employer brushing off a dissatisfied employee. A former crew member shared that during this time, Janelle began spending long hours on the phone with Christine. According to this source, it was as if Christine was deprogramming her, walking her step by step through the corporate structure that had held them captive. After one particularly long conversation, Janelle returned to set with what the crew described as a look of pure fury. She had clearly learned something that shook her to the core. Our theory is that Christine revealed the truth, that the so-called family pot may never have truly existed, and that all the power was concentrated under Kody's LLC. For someone like Janelle, who prided herself on her financial smarts, this would have felt like both a professional and personal betrayal. It would have made her feel duped. But Janelle is no victim. She's a fighter. And once she saw the game for what it was, she began plotting her own exit. Her plan was simple: liquidate, untangle herself from Coyote Pass, get her cash, and sever her ties to Kody's empire. But there was one problem. Her money was tied up in land, which meant she needed Kody to buy her out. Sources speculate that this led to a tense, behind-the-scenes negotiation. Armed with Christine's knowledge and likely her own legal support, Janelle issued a blunt demand: pay me back, return the money from the sale of my Vegas home, return my Coyote Pass investment, or I will join Christine in going public. For Kody and Robyn, this was nothing short of a crisis. They had already drained reserves to pay Christine off, and now Janelle was demanding another large payout. Financial analyst Franklin Adler explained the implications. First, they had to suddenly cough up nearly $750,000 for Christine. Now they were being forced to liquidate again for Janelle, another six-figure sum at minimum. The secret rainy day fund, the very one allegedly fueling Robyn's lavish spending and the couple's lifestyle, was now being depleted by what amounted to hush money, and this is the new way to interpret Robyn's infamous tears. When she cried, "I don't understand why they're doing this. I don't understand what's happening." It wasn't just about losing a family. It was the panic of a financial architect watching her empire collapse. It was the fear of someone who knew exactly how precarious the entire structure really was, because she had helped design it. Every dollar Christine and Janelle pried loose from Kody wasn't just money lost. It was one step closer to financial collapse for him and Robyn. And now, with both women free from his corporate grip and financially independent, something extraordinary happened. For the first time in decades, they could compare notes. Mary, lingering on the edges, was listening carefully. Slowly, the three original wives began forming a new alliance, not out of shared faith or devotion to a husband, but out of a shared sense of betrayal. Together, they were about to uncover the full, terrifying scope of Kody and Robyn's alleged deception, the unholy alliance, and the smoking gun. Once free, Christine, Janelle, and Mary did what they should have done years earlier. They began truly talking. They shared financial documents, pieced together old conversations, and started reconstructing the puzzle of the last 12 years. A source close to one of the wives described these meetings as painful but vindicating. Each woman carried a piece of the puzzle. Christine had the hard-won experience from her legal battle over her home. Janelle, with her sharp business mind, began reviewing old tax documents she had once co-signed without realizing the full implications. And Mary, who had been there through the family's leanest years, saw the glaring inconsistencies between the past scarcity and the later lavish spending. Pooling their resources, they reportedly hired a team of lawyers and forensic accountants. And that's when they found it: the smoking gun. According to a legal insider briefed on the developing case, the wives' legal team uncovered the original articles of incorporation for the family's loan-out company, and it was exactly what they had feared. Kody Brown, sole member, and listed right alongside him as an officer almost from the very beginning. Robyn Brown. This was the proof. It wasn't just Kody's patriarchal scheme. It was allegedly a coordinated financial conspiracy between the two of them from day one. Robyn hadn't merely benefited from the system, she had helped build it. Entertainment lawyer Eliza Vance called it a bombshell. This is the kind of document that wins lawsuits. It's irrefutable proof of the corporate structure. The fact that Robyn is listed as an officer shatters the narrative that she was just another wife. It places her squarely as a key player in the management of the entity, accused of defrauding the other women. It opens her up to direct legal liability. And the documents were just the beginning. The forensic accountants then gained access to the LLC's bank records, finally obtained through legal pressure. What they uncovered was, according to our source, a decade-long pattern of blatant financial abuse. Two distinct patterns of spending emerged. First, the modest, regular salary payments made to the OG wives. And then, everything else. Massive recurring charges at luxury retailers, with tens of thousands spent at places like Victoria's, Secret, and Nordstrom, far beyond what could ever be justified by on-screen salaries. Lease payments for high-end vehicles driven exclusively by Kody and Robyn, lavish vacations for them and their children, never presented on the show as family trips, significant loans from Patriarch Productions funneled into my sister wife's closet, many never repaid and quietly written off as business losses. A textbook way to make money vanish. And then the biggest revelation of all, a direct paper trail linking LLC funds to the down payment and mortgage payments on Kody and Robyn's multi-million-dollar Flagstaff mansion. Forensic accountant Franklin Adler didn't mince words. This is commingling of funds and potential corporate malfeasance. Using company money for personal expenses is a massive red flag, especially when you owe a duty to other stakeholders. In this case, the stakeholders are the very women whose stories funded that corporation. Every dollar spent on a shopping spree for Robyn is arguably a dollar stolen from them. Now, the wives had it all: the corporate structure, the bank records, and a decade-long paper trail of alleged misuse. For over 10 years, they had been the stars of a hit reality show, generating tens of millions in revenue. Yet, behind the scenes, they were treated like low-level employees, forced to beg for scraps while Kody and Robyn lived like royalty off the profits of their pain. They had two choices: leak the story to the press, destroy Kody and Robyn's reputation, and walk away. Or use the very system that had controlled them to strike back and reclaim everything they were owed. They chose war. Chapter 7. The Lawsuit. The Nuclear Option. According to our legal insider, in just the past few weeks, the OG3, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, have filed a massive sealed lawsuit. This isn't about Coyote Pass or family assets. It's a direct, targeted strike at the very heart of the Brown family's television empire. The lawsuit reportedly names Kody Brown Family Entertainment LLC as the defendant, with Kody and Robyn personally listed as co-defendants, alleging breach of fiduciary duty. It's a multi-pronged attack seeking to reclaim a decade of lost earnings, and, in a bold legal maneuver, seize control of their own life stories. Our source broke down the case into 3 primary claims. Claim 1, back pay, and fraudulent inducement. Eliza Vance called this the money shot. The wives' legal team argues their contracts are void because they were signed under false pretenses. They believed they were partners in a family venture, not employees of Kody's private company. If successful, they could demand retroactive profit shares for every episode. By conservative estimates, Sister Wives has generated at least $30 million. If each wife were entitled to 15%, that's $6 million apiece. Subtract the $1.5 to $2 million they may have been paid, and this single claim could be worth over $12 million across the 3 women. Claim 2, profit sharing and asset seizure. This targets assets purchased with misused corporate funds, most notably Kody and Robyn's Flagstaff mansion. Adler explained, if you can prove a corporate asset was purchased with diverted funds, you can petition the court to seize and liquidate it. In other words, the OG wives could force the sale of Kody and Robyn's home, evicting the so-called king and queen from their castle to repay the women whose wages allegedly funded it. Claim 3, intellectual property and termination of rights. This may be the boldest move yet. The wives' lawyers are challenging the work-for-hire clauses in their contracts as fraudulent. If the court agrees, Kody's LLC no longer owns their likenesses, life stories, or even the right to use their footage. That power reverts to them. This is the kill shot. Without the OG wives, Sister Wives as we know it cannot exist. TLC would be forced to either cancel the show or renegotiate separate, lucrative contracts directly with Mary, Janelle, and Christine, cutting Kody out entirely. They wouldn't just win money, they would take back ownership of their own narrative, the aftermath, financial Armageddon. If this lawsuit proceeds as described, the fallout for Kody and Robyn would be catastrophic. A $12 million judgment would bankrupt them instantly. Their mansion, any land at Coyote Pass, their savings, gone. And it could get worse. Allegations of intentional fraud could trigger punitive damages, adding millions more. The IRS could open an investigation into misuse of corporate funds. What begins as a civil case could snowball into a federal one. As Adler put it, they'd be financially radioactive. No network would touch them, their brand would be destroyed. For the OG3 though, this is bigger than money. It's justice. It's about reclaiming power, agency, and the story that was stolen from them. For decades, they were told to keep sweet, stay silent, and obey. But now, united, they've found their voice. They are no longer sister wives, they are a sisterhood. And they are about to hold the patriarch and his chosen queen accountable. The story of Sister Wives was framed as one man's vision of family. But in the end, the real story may be this: 3 women who tore that vision down and built something better for themselves. The love that was supposed to multiply had, instead, been weaponized to divide them. And now, with this explosive lawsuit, they are reclaiming the greatest asset of all, their story. What do you think? Did Kody and Robyn orchestrate a decade-long financial fraud? Let us know in the comments. And stay tuned, the Sister Wives. Crew will be following every development in this case. Until next time, stay strong and stay informed.